A very warm welcome to you, former President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Ayubowan.
Ayubowan.
Good to have you here. You are at the center of a lot of discussion, not just in Sri Lanka, but internationally. This is also a time when we talk about US President Donald Trump in his second term and his new policies, actions implicating not just global growth, but supply chains, economies and trade. What does this mean for Sri Lanka when we're looking at lasting and sustainable growth?
Whatever the United States does affects the rest of the world. We have to remember that. And as far as we are concerned, we must get ready to face the consequences. Firstly, his policy of Make America Great is to focus on America and not to worry too much about their lives if they are of no use to him. Today, America is a power and America feels it can get on and deal with other countries like China and Russia without getting bogged down on some of the older issues. So the first break comes on Ukraine. They have certainly said that he wants peace. I think the American public wants peace. The European nations have said that they want to carry this on. But again, some countries like Italy are backing President Trump. Secondly, so it looks as if he wants to make his own deals, putting America's interests first. Secondly, is on trade. He says that they are getting a bad deal on trade. In most instances, what the Americans are getting, as far as trade is concerned, is basically a deal where the balance is in the favor of some other country. So he is going to put in tariffs and ensure how that is going to ensure that there's more trade coming into USA. Now, how that is the first issue that we have to think of, because we have one of the few countries with which we have a surplus is the United States. It's a surplus of over $1 billion, mainly apparel, but also tea and some other items. Now, we can be hit two ways. One is by imposing tariffs that can reduce the sales. Secondly, also, if there is a downturn in the American economy which will take place, then the sale of apparels will come down, because we go to the lower end of the market, not the high end. So those two will hit us. Now I hear the government wants to reduce tariffs for US to allow more goods to come in. Well, you can do that. They may have to do it, but that means when their imports increase, the surplus we have gets reduced. Then if tariffs will stop sales of some items, reduces further. If the consumer doesn't purchase, it can affect us. So if it affects us by $200-300 million, we have to look at the consequence. But from his side, he says, okay, you are making a surplus. Every year you have made a surplus, so I must get something back. So countries have to get used to the fact that their surpluses with the US will not last. It won't be this big, if at all. Then how does he work out? The bigger issue is going to be between him and China, between US and China. China is also in a position to take some action against US. Then what will Europe do? So we are going into an unknown period, both politically and economically. Thirdly, is that they've moved out of the final one is the climate change. He sort of has moved out, and the line is drill baby drill, which means there will be more oil coming in. That, if it succeeds, can also change the oil market, because there will be a lesser demand on the oil from the Middle East. Then what will the Americans do? Will they lose interest in the Persian Gulf? So there are so many issues that are coming up, and this is really a time where the geopolitics of the world is going to change, and we must be aware of it. because it's going to affect all of us.
But what really is the challenge here for Sri Lanka, President Wickremesinghe, especially when we talk about 2028, when we start repaying debt, when Sri Lanka has to have our industries, our exports and all outward-looking sectors geared to help recover Sri Lanka's economy with the US tariffs and the impact on global trade happening. How do you think this will affect Sri Lanka?
Two ways. Firstly, the access to the US market will have to be through tariffs. So that you have to accept. We'll also have to increase our purchases from US. Now, what is it that we purchase? Very little that we purchase, that we can purchase. So the global trade will also be affected. The world trade will come down in the next 2 years. The global economy will come down. Trade will be affected. Then you'll need another 2-3 years to pick up, because with this we also have the fact that the Chinese economy is still recovering from the real estate crisis. Then we also have to look for other markets. So immediately the market we have is India. We have to deal with India. We can't fight with India. So that is the market we have. Europe will stick to free trade, but I think in the short term, because of the tariffs, their trade will be affected. So we have to look at India, and then as it is, develop our markets in Asia with China, with Southeast Asia. That's why RCEP is useful. Free trade agreements are needed here.
You say look to India, but what is your opinion of the new government's, the present government's handling of the negotiations with the Adani Group, especially when certain agreements were made for investments in Sri Lanka and the group withdrew its investments, but there are new information that they're looking at new projects. However, does this signal that Sri Lanka's investment climate is not ready to support large-scale investments, or is this a case of political stability?
There are two aspects. One is Adani, one is the vision statement which Prime Minister Modi agreed 2023. The vision statement really is now what Indian pattern is to get together the projects we have done earlier, put them all into one statement. Now recently when Prime Minister Modi went to Mauritius, they had the enhanced vision statement with Mauritius. Right. So this put together what was being discussed when President Sirisena was there, I was Prime Minister, then under President Gotabaya, and then what we concluded. A whole series of one which have brought Sri Lanka closer to India. And because at the moment, the surplus is on the Indian side. The terms of trade are against us. So we have to turn it around. You have to find new products, new areas to go into. So this is the way, and I appreciated it because when we were down, when economy was broken, it's only India that was able to help us with 4.5 billion. And Indian market is growing. Today the economy is 3.5 trillion. By 2050, they say it will be 30 trillion. That's nearly 8 or 9-fold increase. Into that were the first areas that we focused on. One was power connectivity, where they were willing to buy our renewable energy. But at that time also, there was the Adani power project. Now that was for sale of power to the Sri Lanka. Now Adani's project itself, it came in 2021, 22. It had been approved by the time I became president. We had to negotiate it. And we negotiated with the Adani, not myself, but there was a project committee and a cabinet appointed negotiation committee. First thing they did was they put the parameters for negotiation, the values. For instance, the parameters for debt equity. On that, both sides agree on 70 debt, 30 equity. Then cost of money. So all that was there. So it's within these parameters. Now the parameters are agreed to by the two sides. The government of Sri Lanka agreed to a parameter. Government of Sri Lanka is represented by the electricity authorities as well as the negotiating committees. Then within it, they started negotiating. So when they negotiated, they offered, that bid tariff they offered was for manna 10 cents, 10.9 cents, and for Poonarine 11.1 cents. Finally, we agreed on 8.2 cents, 8.26. So that was a reduction, and that's what our negotiating teams agreed to. So both sides agreed to 8.26. And now we are saying it's too much. It was passed by the then cabinet. Adanis were informed, Indian government was informed, and now they are kicking up a row. They refer to an earlier one, a wind power project, which is being given at 4.65. Now that was also called for during this time, and it was awarded at it was awarded to the bidders. It's called, I think, Fenton Limited. Then one of the other parties went to court. Now they went to court and it delayed. So the award was given during the time of this government, made during our time, and that was for 50 megawatt wind power, which was at 4.6. This is for nearly 500 megawatts with the cost of infrastructure, everything put in there.
That's the Adani.
Adani one. And they said the cost of money was more expensive for Sri Lanka at that time. So all that was taken. Our officials knew at that time there was another one at which it was 4.6. So it was not that we didn't know or that there was no competition, but there were two different, these two entities could not be matched. Whoever else came, if you threw Adani out, even anyone else who came. So now Adani says we won't back down because we had a deal with the government, which is true. Now I have to explain that when I was in Delhi, I ducked or fudged many of my answers. When the government has agreed to it, how can you go back? How can you compare it with this? I mean, they try to say they had offered less. Yes, at if it's a 50 megawatts, it was less. And it was done. We were negotiating, the government of Sri Lanka negotiating both this at the same time. So you can't say it was not known or someone else. This was a big project. My worry is that we want to have connectivity, power connectivity with India. So we could sell power to India. We have about 4,000 or 5,000 megawatts. And we have to make about 80% or 70% of it renewable energy, ensure it's renewable energy. So India wants renewable energy, because if countries start putting taxes on other countries which use non-renewable energy, if they don't have this percentage of that is given and that has been agreed to, then they become uncompetitive. Therefore, India wants renewable energy. They have an agreement with Nepal. They have an agreement with Bhutan. Bhutan is making money supplying power to India. They wanted a similar one with us. And Prime Minister Modi spoke to me and he asked me, how much of power can you give? I said, I was not expert, I didn't even know the full amount, but talking to the then Minister Kanchan used to tell me that we could give we will have 200 gigawatts of renewable energy if all the rooftop solar was there. So I didn't want to say 200. I said, well, we can give 25 gigawatts, that's 25,000 megawatts, even go up to 50,000, that's 50 gigawatts, to see how it is. And he said, we can buy whatever you give us. The Foreign Minister, Mr. Jaishankar, has told that to me. So I thought, let's get over this and let's start on this. Then the foreign exchange we earn from this fee more than what we get from apparels or from what we get from foreign employment. So one is that issue. Now we are stuck on that.
What's the estimate, former President, of the foreign exchange that we would have otherwise?
I won't be able to tell you offhand, but certainly far more than what we are getting now from apparels, which is about 2 billion or something. Then second was the pipeline. They want to use Trincomalee Harbour because Bay of Bengal will be very important in the next 20 years. For instance, Indonesia will be the 4th largest economy, Bangladesh, Thailand among the first 30 economies in the world, and India the 2nd largest. So they want to use Trincomalee Harbour, and we'd agreed not only about the fuel tanks. They want to store fuel as an emergency measure. But we said no, then you must develop Trincomalee. And then we agreed on a special economic zone of 1,000 acres, then some other development of tourism, some other items that they were looking at, and to fund part of the development, the roads. So main item was a line, oil pipeline from Nagapatnam to here, to Trincomalee. So the basically the fuel could be sent there by pipeline without having to use ships, and to store the fuel here. I am agreeable. The issue was there of the question of refinery. But I was not too worried about refinery, because we were thinking whether we should get a refinery in there. Otherwise, as we checked up, and they also, some other people confirmed, there was surplus capacity now. Another 5 to 10 years time, they won't have surplus capacity. So you can easily put a refinery at that stage, not at this stage. It didn't make sense. At that stage, and they want to store more oil. And I asked them, I said, if you want to break these tanks and put bigger tanks, so you can store 1 week's oil for southern Tamil Nadu in case there's a crisis. So that was the other project. So this project has also been stopped, saying that there is no refinery. The final agreement, there was not going to be a refinery immediately. Either we could look at it later, or we would bring one there ourselves. So that is also out. Then the third one is the Amul project, where the National Livestock Development Board has failed. So they were willing to take over the farms and ensure that within 10 years that our milk production is doubled. And before 15 years, I thought 12, but I said, okay, you say 15, that we'll have surplus milk. I mean, every household, every child will be able to get a glass of milk by that time, and surplus milk to make milk-based products which can be exported. So that has also is on hold. Now these three, I think Adani's project is about 700 million US. It's no joke. We need that money to recover. Then the pipeline and others developing Trinco in the medium term would have got us about another 400 million. This would have been about another 100 or more. So just imagine, over $1 billion we have stopped. Now Indians are saying, they asked me, look, you negotiated this. The government,
have they expressed any sentiment in terms of the handling of this policy?
Oh yeah, most of the Indians I met when I went last time. So I had to, I mean, it was embarrassing for me. I said, no, these are all under consideration. But the fact is, I don't know whether it's under consideration or it's been rejected.
But have you discussed this with the present government?
I informed them of the problems I had. So it's up for them, because there are different ministries. The problem in Sri Lanka is everyone leaves, it has been even under our governments, everyone leaves the issue of foreign relations to the foreign ministry. But foreign ministry does not make policy decisions on the other ministry. They are only a conduit. If you have, if they are good, okay, that's one way. If it's bad, it's another way. So what is happening, we have gone back on the agreements with the government of India. And the vision statement was put out in 2023. No opposition party objected to it. So this government must act on this. Otherwise you are going to have another issue with India. And at this stage, we have to get into the Indian market.
How do you think this backtrack on our agreement will really shape Indo-Lanka relations going forward? From time to time, we saw certain actions of governments impacted relations, but Sri Lanka, during crisis, India came forward to support the country. But again, in terms of regional security and growth, how does this impact?
No, it will leave a bad feeling. Certainly, I keep the government side. Okay, the Indian public feels so, and at the moment, a lot of Indian investment was to follow Adani. They haven't. Now we are getting tourists into Jaffna because of India. Our options are limited. India bailed us out, but this 4.5 billion alone is not sufficient, because we have to, I have stabilized the economy, but recovery has to be there, growth has to be there. And if India, we do some major projects with India, then what happens is our growth is there, our recovery is there. And once India invests in us, other people will also come in, because the Bay of Bengal will be very important. By 2050, India will be the second largest economy. Indonesia will be the fourth largest economy. Then you have Bangladesh, you have Thailand, even Malaysia, and the highest per capita income in the world will be in Singapore. So we are in the middle of this. And Tamil Nadu is one of the fastest growing states, with Andhra next to it, and Andhra, Telangana, all of them will have a $6 trillion economy. My idea was, why can't we have a $1 trillion economy by 2050, 2055? It's possible, but you have to get onto it. So then other issue was the land connectivity between India and Sri Lanka. Arrangement for they'll do a feasibility study. Then I said, no, we need after that about 2 years to discuss this whole issue, because some people are worried having a land connectivity with India, others say we should have it. So let it be thrashed out, and once and for all we can agree one way or other. So if all that came in, then we would have had a thriving economy.
What does this mean for the region, President Wickremesinghe? Especially we've spoken about SAARC, the least integrated region in the world. And again, we're talking about the massive growth we're seeing in India. You spoke about Bhutan, you spoke about Nepal, and again this region has seen massive shocks, Sri Lanka especially. But how can Sri Lanka be at the center of linking the region, but also ensuring energy security and economic growth and connectivity for our entire region?
SAARC will be under strain for some time till the relations between India and Pakistan improves. But what's happening is all the other countries are in BIMSTEC, other than Maldives. So that's the Bay of Bengal. It's not only Indian economy. If the Bangladesh economy will increase fourfold, so it's a dynamic. Thailand is dynamic. Indonesia is going to be dynamic. Malaysia is already growing. By that time, we hope problems in Myanmar will settle. They want to have the Myanmar-China corridor, where the Myanmar ports will service Western China. The corridor will go up to Kunming, but from Kunming it will go into Chongqing. Chongqing will also have the Central Asian Railway coming there. So you can see the dynamism. Then Southeast Asia's connectivity. So on my idea was that we have connected, this is the eastern part of the Bay of Bengal. We are the west part. There is no connectivity there. So if we have it, we can match it, and Sri Lanka will benefit. I mean, having a $1 trillion economy is a 10-fold increase. Why not? If India is going to big and they want to go for 9-fold, why don't we go for 10-fold? We are next to Tamil Nadu and Andhra and Telangana.
Where does China stand here, especially when it comes to Sri Lanka? I also want to ask you whether during your tenure you were able to manage foreign relations in such a way where China was pleased, balanced, especially in terms of what they had given to Sri Lanka, while India played a massive role during your term.
We don't balance, we call multi-alignment. We are aligned with all our friends, and everyone is our friend. No, we had a good relationship with China, and that relationship went on. And I must say, we had these big projects like the Hambantota Harbour, we have the port city, but unless Sri Lanka grows, they can't get a return on the projects. We must grow at least 5-fold. They'll be the happiest if we grow 10-fold, because that means returns on theirs and some of the other projects will come fast. Now, we keep that friendship with China. I've gone there. We've taken part in Belt and Road Initiative. I met President Xi Jinping. They are willing to help us. But if we won't grow, they'll forget about us. But China is also having with the maritime Silk Road, they're also going to create an economy inside in the Indian Ocean. So we must also be a part of that. I have no problems with that. And we should work with it. especially they'll focus a lot on the Western Indian Ocean and Africa. So that's another one. Then third is Japan. Japan, though we don't talk about it, has been helping all the countries for the last 50, 60 years. And they have a big say in it. So the big players is going to be India, there'll be China, there'll be Japan. You will find Indonesia growing. Then finally, we will have Australia. Now Australia is trying to be the regional superpower for renewable energy. There's so much of land and so much of sun, and then they want to put a cable from Australia to Singapore, and then put another cable from Singapore to India, so that they can supply power to India. India's need is going to be so big.
With all the developments that you explained to us, where do you think this global power shift will go to, especially in the next few decades?
Global power shift was coming to Asia, but more to Indian Ocean now. My view is Indian Ocean, but this is everything must go through the Indian Ocean, and the growth in the Indian Ocean will be far more faster than the Asia Pacific. You can see Japan has come, and at a certain stage growth slows down. China will go on for some time, but its growth will slow. Similarly, all the countries, with this Korea, East Asia, that will take place. I wanted Sri Lanka, and I've applied to join the RCEP, Regional Economic Cooperation Partnership. So we have to get into it, but the power is coming here. On the Indian Ocean side, now look at how developed the West Indian Ocean is. The Russians are basically there. All the Russian oil is really being refined in the Middle East. And it's coming onto the market under the Middle East label. Russian goods are being sold. So look how it has developed. It's becoming more and more important. But what's happening firstly is what I call the BRICS. The BRICS are also becoming important. The best instance is the Ukraine war. When Europe has said to apply sanctions against Russia, most of the big countries either didn't apply sanctions. Some didn't. Some, like Sri Lanka, stayed neutral. Some countries voted against Russia in the UN but did not apply any sanctions. As a result, Russia survived. Once Russian economy survived, they were in a position to carry on the war, though it's taking a toll on them. And now we have to all admit the fact that Ukraine can't win the war. Now it's coming to a situation that President Trump and President Putin are speaking, but that's because of us. So the global power is shifting here, and most important is going to be the Indian Ocean. And we are in the middle of it. Are we going to make use of it? Are we going to become economically powerful? I should, because most of our people are poor. I know how much they have suffered. We are still not, households are not yet recovered from the impact of the economic disaster that we had. But if your income will grow 5-fold or 10-fold, are you for it or against it?
Do you think you were able to lay the foundation for Sri Lanka to take advantage of this power shift to our region, especially during your tenure? We understand you became president when Sri Lanka plunged to rock bottom, but at the same time, were the necessary foundation and the framework laid during your time?
The framework has been laid. It's a question of if they are going to continue or not. The framework requires confidence by other countries. There are no other framework. That you stand by your word and you really are up to performance, your economy is strong. Now, if you don't do that, the rest is useless.
The government implemented your IMF agreement that you entered into with the global lender in full, but also challenged that certain other agreements will be revived, reviewed, especially also amendments to the Economic Transformation Act will be introduced. How do you think this will showcase Sri Lanka's policy stability and continuation to the global?
You should continue the same policies. If you are amending it, it must be within the framework, the debt sustainability analysis and the extended fund facility agreements, and it must be agreed to by the IMF. So everyone has to take responsibility. Then IMF is also answerable to the creditor nations and also the private bondholders. They are very, very careful. You can't be changing things like earlier. You have to stick to it. If you want to change the Economic Transformation Act, then you must say what it is. I mean, there are a lot of loose talk here. But so far, I don't know. I don't see that very much of implementation taking place, which I think is going to be the major problem.
And before we go in for a short break, where do you think Sri Lanka's economy stands today from where you left off and where we are today?
We have stabilized the economy. The next phase is recovery. 2 years to stabilize. I didn't want to go on like Greece forever and ever. So we've done that. Now they have to carry on and go to the next phase, recovery. But recovery is also tied with growth. Investment leads not only to recovery but to growth, and you must start now.
Do you think you would have done something different during your tenure? Or
no, I think this is a crisis. I've handled it. I don't think anyone could have handled it any differently.
I think we have much to talk about local politics as well, former President. How do you look at the stability of the current government? Of course, they received an overwhelming majority, but you spoke about the challenges, the sensitivities, not just on the Sri Lankan economy, but on the region and the globe, especially with the Donald Trump administration and its policies. How do you think this government is going to withstand all these challenges? What are your predictions? We've heard a lot from you in the past as well.
It's not a question of withstanding. It's not an attack. The whole scenario is changing. And how do we change with it? Now that's something the government has to decide. Opposition should ask questions in Parliament. Unfortunately, many questions are not being asked, and they should debate it in Parliament. It has not happened so far. I hope it will take place sometime. Maybe you want to watch what is happening with President Trump for another month or two, but we know what the track he is on. So are we getting ready? Not merely because it's going to change the total geopolitics, everything will change. Trade will change, climate change, and security. So we have to look at what are the changes, how are we going to adapt. Now in many countries, even in India, they are talking of this. But in Sri Lanka, we have not taken any of those up. We are still talking of clean Sri Lanka, but my worry is what is going to happen in the world.
And in terms of risks on the economy, we had the worst economic crisis, but you did reiterate that if we did not implement certain measures taken, that we might go down the same road.
Yes, I mean, we could not recover without going through the IMF. Every
but some
country.
argue, some argue the IMF.
Well, where will you find the money then? All the creditor nations, the bilateral creditors wouldn't help us unless we were cleared by the IMF, that we had agreement. Our bondholders wouldn't go. They all wanted an IMF certificate. Now, how can you do this without IMF certificate? I know people write articles, talk about it, but have you got any other source of money? You needed IMF, and we were bad because we have been breaking our agreements with the IMF. So I do a lot of negotiations because when I was in charge, I never broke any agreements with the IMF. And this is the extended fund facilities what we agreed to, and it was put to Parliament. There was no major vote against it. So now they anticipate that whoever comes as government will follow the EFF and also the debt sustainability analysis. Now this all went before the Public Finance Committee. I think Dr. Harsha De Silva was the chair of that. So this has been discussed. Now they want people to implement it, not to depart from it. If you depart from this, it's going to be serious issues. But the IMF certification help is required. What happened to us? We went down. I mean, basically we became bankrupt. How did we function? The whole world cut off all commercial relations with us. There was no banking, nothing. I couldn't even get fuel. I had to speak to Cindy McCain, John McCain's wife, whom I knew, and as a personal, I virtually begged for her, I knew her, for some fertilizer. So now if you don't have the IMF certificate, you go back to that. Your queues will be twice as long. Once that certificate came, then the money started coming in. Once we had finished with the EFF and it was approved in March 2023, then at least we could get the economy moving. That's how it picked up. You know, the first 2 quarters of 2023, we were minus growth. But once we go in from the third quarter, we have had 6 quarters of growth going on. Without international support, you can't do it, whatever else you talk. It had to be hardships. I had to take very unpopular decisions. I knew that. But there was no other option. That's why no one else wanted to take it, because they didn't want to take these decisions, or they thought the country could not be pulled out. But this is the bedrock of our economic development. So what I've done is I only stabilized. I got it going back. Now the economy functioning. It's basically positive growth. It has gone closer to about 5. People estimated to be at 2. Now next is recovery. Between 2025 and 2027, we must recover sufficiently so that we can start repaying our loans. Now recovery is that period. This is the important period. I think former Governor Indrajit Kumarasamy said this is going to be the most difficult period. Yes, I agree with him. In a way, it will be more difficult than what we had to handle. But I put it in place. If you carry this on, it won't be a big problem unless world situation, economic situation changes. But then you require growth. If we don't grow, in addition to repaying these loans, we are going to take more loans.
The government borrowed over 700 billion rupees from the domestic market through issuances of government securities, although they promised not to do so previously. Was this necessary? What are the implications?
There has been shortfalls of revenue. They shouldn't do it, but anyway, they had to do it to get it going. I don't know. In fact, I was waiting to see. I saw yesterday one of the Treasury officials has said that on the tax amendments alone, they'll lose about 60 billion rupees, but some people say it will be more. I don't think the revenue figures are falling into place so far. When the IMF review teams come early April, then I think they'll have to go through it and satisfy them. But it's a bit worrying that we have these figures.
Is the current administration working with you at any point?
No, they're not working with me.
How badly did you want the top job at the time? Some say you worked for it, that you manipulated the situation in Parliament at the time. But others say there was a deal struck between the Rajapaksas and yourself.
Did I manipulate for people to come and burn my house? I mean, I came in, but no one else wanted it. We all thought the leader of the opposition should become the prime minister. He didn't want it. No one wanted it. The present president didn't want it. That's how it happened to come in. What happened after that, you should ask Aragale how they organized it.
Do you think anyone else could have done something different, or did you do the best that a leader could have done?
I have done my best. Whether others could have done better than me, I don't know. No one else was around to judge it.
A recent interview you had with an international news agency brought to light gruesome period of Sri Lanka's history. The Batalanda Commission report details serious concerns regarding human rights violations that Sri Lanka had faced, criticism that political figures in Sri Lanka have rarely faced legal consequences for alleged human rights violations in Sri Lanka, regardless of acts against human rights. And the Supreme Court, it recommended, be vested with suitable additional jurisdiction to improve or impose sanctions in the form of deprivation of civic rights on persons who are found to repeatedly violate basic fundamental rights of citizens. You have often advocated for democratic values and rule of law in Sri Lanka. However, the allegations in the Batalanda Commission report suggest a different narrative. How do you reconcile your long-standing commitment to democracy with the concerns raised in this report, former President?
I am always committed to democracy. As far as the report is concerned, I have made a statement. I have nothing more to say about that. This is a 25-year-old report.
But do you think...
If other governments did not act on it, but I have made my statement, I won't make any more statements unless it's really necessary.
But some say that due to political affiliations, no action was taken. Do you think that an apology is needed to the victims by the state?
There is no recommendation as such in the report, and the governments that were in power between 2000 and now consisted of, at different time, different parties were in power, including the JVP. But I think I'm not interested now in talking about Batalanda. I think the global affairs are more interesting, and let Parliament debate it on the 10th of April.
I think the question of human rights violations during the final stages of the war also came to light. Your commitment to democracy again was highlighted here. How do we look at Sri Lanka's commitment to accountability and working with the international community going forward, especially when we talk about human rights violations and ensuring that the victims of the civil conflict have some closure?
Actually, President Rajapaksa signed an agreement with the Secretary General of the UN. My position is we have to honor it. A lot of the issues like missing persons, we've started. It's too slow, but at least we started it. What is outstanding is the question of inquiry. And all the parties of the position, like many other countries, including India, China and all, this should be done by judges, Sri Lankan judges or Sri Lankan appointees, not outsiders. But I said we are willing to have observers. Now, we brought in a commission draft under President Maithripala Sirisena. A new one was done with the help of Japan and South Africa, which is the Commission on Truth, Unity and Reconciliation. So I think we should pass that in Parliament and get down to work on it. So this will meet with the requirements. They can do all the inquiries, then the Attorney General decides who should be prosecuted, who can't be prosecuted. Now, what is the background? We have done this. The West is going at us, the Europeans. Why is it? Okay, we had a war. The 40,000 were not killed. I mean, basically in Gaza, 40,000 people were killed. The population was over 1 million. So then there should have been 1 million people in that. The total of the North didn't have 1 million people. There were people who died in the crossfire, I admit that. But it was certainly not that numbers. And Frances Harris, when I questioned her, said she didn't say it was 40,000. Now, because of this, we have taken many steps. You have to remember that we are the longest practicing democracy in the world. We went through wars. We held elections. We lost some of our leaders. We lost some of our candidates. We lost, but from 1988 onwards, the presidential, we held every election. And we are gone. You give us credit for that. And people who took up arms against us, whether it be the Tamil militants or the JVP, they are in parliament, they are in government, they are in the presidency. Which country can boast of such record? Now they are all covering Ukraine, where Zelensky did not hold election. He said there's a war. So in America, there was a war in 1812. The British invaded America, they held the election. In US, there was a civil war. Lincoln held the election. Of the 39 states, only 27 or 28 voted. I mean, this, when Europe wants, they cover up. When Trump said this, they even went to challenge Trump on it. The fact is that we had a similar situation in 1988, and then remember from there onwards, till 2010, part of the North and the East did not vote. They were under the LTT. So why can't they? Why one law for why is there one law for us and another law for Ukraine? That's all that I'm asking. There have been human rights violations there also. But why should we put up with this? Even look at Gaza. 40,000 dead there. What are they doing? They want our people to be tried before the International Criminal Court. We are against it. Why don't we try so many other leaders? Then we have this peculiar situation a few days ago. The Secretary for Foreign Affairs, Foreign Secretary in UK says that Israel has violated the humanitarian law. The Prime Minister says Israel may, if they carry on, they may violate the humanitarian law. So when you have the double standards, I say whatever commitment we have made, we must fulfill, and the Tamil people in the north must feel that justice is being done by them. I am against those who say don't do anything. But at the same time, if you do it now, I say walk out of the Human Rights Council. If this is the time. Trump has walked out. You say you can't. Otherwise, we want an investigation into the Asian section of the High Commissioner's office. Who the hell are they? So I think we have to take a hard stand if we are prepared to fulfill our commitments to the Secretary General. If we don't, then we are going to be in a difficult situation. All the parties should get together, pass this, say we are going it. I mean, I am more than there to support, and then tell the Human Rights Council, okay, we are also moving on. If President Trump can do it, why can't we do it? Some of them will say there will be no transfer. No, I say if you have a committee, we have two countries, but have a committee. If you want any European Union or any European country or anyone else wants to come in, let them be in a committee so it will be very transparent. But Human Rights Council can't jump on some people and not on the others.
48 years, nearly 50 years in politics, former President Wickremesinghe, you were most of your career accused of supporting the LTTE or the LTTE cause. And now some question whether you failed the diaspora during your tenure by not really bringing in a lasting solution to the national question. But how did this happen, the turn of events? You're now defending Sri Lanka's record internationally from Western thinking to nationalistic.
I have always been against international, this matter has been taken to the International Criminal Court. I've always been against it. What I have said is do what we have promised, and justice must be done by the Tamils. I never said no. I'm all for it. I have lost the election also because of that. Well, I was accused of supporting the LTT. When that was over, I was accused of supporting the Rajapaksa. So let's leave that aside. But what I've seen in the West recently shows double standards. And that's why I'm in the place of Ukraine, really looking at the number of my friends, my leaders who got killed, just to have a free and fair election. And they won't give that benefit to us. But they can tell Zelensky, okay, you go, you change everything. That way I must say President Trump really called it a day when he said, you are not elected. And then look at the way they jumped. If they can jump on President Trump, what is it against us? So our only thing we can do in this instance is to fulfill our remark, and I'm all for. I've talked with them, give him additional responsibility to the provincial councils, all that is there, and have the inquiry, punish anyone who's guilty of it. And I started so many other measures. But if the UN Human Rights Council wants to have double standards, it should not be at the expense of Sri Lanka. I think that all of us agree. That's all that I'm saying. I am not against anything else, but even that I think we can stay if the UN, if there's an inquiry into the functioning of the Asian section of the Human Rights, the Commissioner's office. It was much easier to deal with Navi Pillai. She understood all this. She didn't agree with us, but you could speak to her. These are like guys who are shouting. I mean, they have to realize that they are there because of us. It's we who fought World War II. It's we who liberated Europe. Surely. And we've gone on with elections. How many Europeans are fighting Hitler? You have 2.5 million Indians. Sri Lankans were in that army. There were Africans. So how can you claim the right for... You won't have a human rights declaration if we didn't fight and defeat Hitler. So all I'm saying is after we have done all that, don't have double standards. If you have single standard and you condemn, I'm willing to take it up. My question is not human rights. My question is double standards.
Back to Sri Lanka's economy very quickly. We only have a few minutes. You've continuously during your tenure as president spoken about action against climate change and debt to climate swaps as well. But some criticize this is not viable. You've continuously called the global north to stop funding wars, but to look at countries in the global south who are taking the worst of the misuse of the West or even the global north. What is the situation here for Sri Lanka, especially when we're looking at ways and means to finance Sri Lanka's debt and have sustainable growth?
No, firstly is the overall issue of funding. Everyone talks, there's no money. So, how do you get the money? What the amounts that have been promised at the Paris summit was small. Then President Macron was having more discussions, but finally I think the events in France overtook him. We don't know how the new government will react to it. But where is the money to deal with climate change action? And one is debt for nature swaps. Now, we are prepared to get into that, but Sri Lanka was ready. I think even now we should be ready for it. The issue is that without the money, you can't do anything. Secondly, what a lot of the South has said, look, this is not our responsibility. You all created it. Now, don't ask us to pay for the damage. In my view, I think we have to take action. We also have to take a part of the responsibility. It is our own countries, but they must come up with a realistic plan for funding. If that is not available, I came up with the Tropical Belt Initiative. There are a lot of things we can do. There are areas that they don't, institutions that don't pay tax. For instance, you must put a levy on all the banks in tax-free havens. They don't pay money, they have a lot of the money with them, whether it's in Bahamas or Channel Islands, tax all those institutions. You are not taxing the people or not the deposit holders. So there are new ways we can think of, but finally we have to come up with the money. Unfortunately, President Trump has pulled out of it. And that again is a loss of fund. You can't do anything without the resources and the finance. So I was really looking at the financing on climate change and tying it up to the debt that we owe.
When you returned to Parliament before you took up your presidency, the country's top post, you predicted the crisis. And now how do you evaluate Sri Lanka's economy? I think many are looking to see what your thoughts are, how you analyze Sri Lanka's economy going forward, and what really strengths we have. For years we've been looking at governments to strengthen and set the country towards development, towards lasting development, and Sri Lankans were failed.
Actually, Sri Lanka needs growth, fast growth. Sri Lankans deserve it. They've suffered a lot in the last few years. I understand that. I had to take the unpopular decisions, and still we are not back to normal. We need growth. Only way to have growth is firstly to work with other countries and have an attractive environment for foreign investment. We can't do without foreign investment. This economy is not a fully market-oriented economy. We must do the other reforms. Then the economic stabilization will bear fruit. As to the present state of the economic stabilization, we'd like to listen to what the World Bank has to say, the review teams. But remember, this is only stabilizing. There's nothing more than that. To go ahead, we have to make major changes. I don't know whether this government is willing to make the changes from the statements they have made. But without major changes, without getting foreign money, without being friendly with countries, we have to work with India. First step. I'm not saying not to work with China. Certainly, we must work with China. But Chinese are correct in saying, look, we have invested 2 billion, what are the returns we have? Japanese are watching at us, Koreans, and Europeans will also come. But let's work with everyone. But here is a ready market. We should not throw it away. Reality, deal with, we can't be by ourselves in this world. And that's what we have learned. If not for Nirmala, Sitaraman, and the Indian Prime Minister, I won't be able to have this with you. Your place may have been even burnt up.
You're ex-president, but you seem to be in the forefront of many discussions. You're in India, you're in London, you're meeting world leaders, and you're talking about a lot of agreements that Sri Lanka should be implementing. Are we to see you back in national politics?
No, I'm keeping out on national politics and talking of what happens outside Sri Lanka or the world in general.
What would be your next strategic move?
Take a holiday for Sinhala New Year.
Interesting. Okay. I think it's time we wrap up the show, okay. But I'd like you to leave a message to the younger generations, the generations and generations who are waiting to see how Sri Lanka recovers and revives from these troubled times, and even to young politicians who will lead the country in the decades to come.
We need not be poor. We can have a $1 trillion economy. We must go for it. It's that generation that will benefit, not us. But to do that, you must understand the realities of the economy, economics, and the current geopolitics. You can't ignore that. We have to live with the world. We must know how to get the best out of the world.
Thank you very much, former President Ranil Wickremesinghe, for your time here at Hyde Park on Other Therana 24.
Thank you.